Well, Rovers, we are getting very close to decking over this aft end. We just have a couple of more preliminary steps to do in the form of longitudinal deck beams. My name's Alan Mulholland. I'm a solo sailor, and this is the story of how I built my Wave Rover 650. 3 years ago, I refitted a 40-year-old Contessa 26 and took her on an amazing 7,800 nautical mile ocean voyage. We crossed the Atlantic twice, but a knockdown on the second crossing and COVID-19 put an end to my solo circumnavigation. So now, I'm building a new boat, smaller, lighter, but more suited for a solo circumnavigation. The Wave Rover 650. In this video, I'll be putting in longitudinal structural members that'll help form the matrix that the deck will be secured to. Anyway, Rovers, a lot to do. Time to crack on. Well, before I can install these deck beams, and by that I mean these pieces of pine right here, I have to put a little bit of reinforcement on the back of some of these ring frames in order to strengthen them and give them a point where I can secure the deck and the beams themselves. There'll be 5 of these going across, so I'm just prepping the wood right now for that. Well, this is a beautiful piece of clear pine. It came from the island, so it's quite local, and it's almost a full inch thick. It's about 15/16 of an inch. So I'm just going to run it through the table saw here just to give myself a nice straight edge, and then I'll be able to get both of the beam supports out of this. So these will be the 2 beam supports, and I need to just do a little bit of round over and sanding on them, and then we'll go install them. Now I'm going to round over the edge of this beam because if you round over edges of solid wood like this, epoxy paint and all that will stick to it much better than if you have a sharp edge like that. And that's why you want to have at least a 3/8 if not a 1/2 inch round over. So I'm using it 3/8 because it's inside. I tend to use my 1/2 inch round over on the exterior of the boat. All right, so you saw me working on these yesterday. Now I'm just going to install them. There's a little bit of glue on this, and the only reason is because it's excess from the one I just did. I'll be doing this properly in a second. But right now I just want to get my lines worked out. So there, we're good. I'll just put a couple of spring clamps on. So that was just a countersinking bit that I used. You can see it maybe there. And that's because the screws, I want the heads of these screws, they're stainless steel screws, but I want them sunk below the surface so I can fill them because it's a living area. Okay, so now that we've got it screwed, you know, basically it's a dry fit. There was just a little bit of glue residue I was trying to economize with. Now I'll glue it up properly. Just back out these screws. Now we'll put some glue on this. Okay, might be hard to see the level of glue, but it is quite thick. And that's what's recommended for Tight Bond 3, is to put it on very liberally. And this is where dry fitting and having your screw holes already set helps align the timbers. Now we're checking for glue squeeze out. We may have to use some clamps. Yeah, we need to tighten this area up right here. So we will get some clamp savers.
Oh, there it is. Okay, we're recording.
All right.
We're live.
So over the last couple of days we managed to glue on all these extra pieces of pine, but now it's a matter of tracing on the camber of the deck. And we have to reduce, see right there, this side as well. Reduce the pine down to those lines. So I'll actually just take a saw, just stay just above my line, and then we'll hit it with a planer after. Anyway, time to crack on with that. So an easy way to check your work is just by looking at the gap under a straight edge. Now, in order to be accurate, you really need to run a parallel line. So the distance from here to the straight edge has to be the same throughout. But you can see just the gap underneath the straight edge, it remains closed all the way to the back, all the way to the transom. Ooh, look who dropped by the boat shed today to lend a hand. We're cutting some peel ply. And I know some of you have already told me that you can buy peel ply in narrow strips like this, but you can't get it here. So we're cutting it, and the rest will be used for the deck, of course. Thanks very much, Mrs. Rover. So this is just a little segment of the beams that will be running across here. And this is an example here. Glenda, can you get a little bit of film of this? So that's what we're after. We're going to be putting beams that transit through all of these bulkheads. So yeah, let's get on with that. So I've made these little marks where I know I want them. I know that my wood is 3/4 of an inch, so I'm just going to make a couple of lines here. 3/4 of an inch. Here and here. And I'm just doing the same down in this end. You'll have to take my word for it, I think. Okay, so now that I've established that, I'll just take a straight edge. I'll line it up. Okay, there. And there. Okay, once it's lined up, then it's a matter of marking. Okay, now there's the other side. Okay, good. Right, so now it's a matter of taking the router to here and the skill saw to here. So I'll be doing that next. So I'm going to use the skill saw just to make the slot for this. It's important that I follow the top lines. If you're not comfortable doing what I just did with the skill saw, you can use a chisel to clean the bottom of that. Then we'll just do a quick little test fit. Boom, perfect, right at the right height. And don't forget, it doesn't need to be tight because we're filling this with thickened epoxy. Good. Another test fit. Nice. So we're actually below, but that's fine. Once we put thickened epoxy in there, we can control the height of this pretty easily. Excellent. So what we're looking at is this beam isn't sitting flat on the transom, and the reason for that is because if I actually cut that slot all the way down, there would be very little wood left to support this beam. So what I'm going to do instead is cut a notch out of the beam. So let's go do a test fit. Okay, so there's the end that we have manipulated, and there's the hole that it's going into. So we have a nice fit. That's a nice fit. We have a little bit of space on each side, and that'll be for epoxy to fill, and it's nice and level across the top. That'll be a nice solid joint. And there we go, the beams all sitting more or less where we want. Next step is going to be to glue them up. But it's a nice shape. It's one of those, you know, days where you feel like you've accomplished something. Even though the plywood deck hasn't gone on, you get the feeling that you can see it very clearly. Okay, so we've done a test fit on our beams. I'm very happy with it. As you can see, I'm using some weights on the back end to hold them in place. Now I just need to mark where all the intersections are. So I'm going to start doing that up here. And the reason for marking this is because we're going to be wetting out both the slots and the beam. So we're wetting it out because that's part of the whole glue up. You wet out first, and then you put the thickened epoxy in. So I'll just finish this off, and then we'll crack on with the next step, which is mixing up the epoxy. Yep. A couple of squirts of resin, a couple of squirts of hardener. Mix it up for a minute and a half, and then I'll just brush it on. So I had excess glue left over from the big glue up, so I filled a lot of the screw holes, and then I put some packing tape over top, and now they're dry, and you can just you can feel they're already smooth. They just need a tiny bit of sanding, and they're done. It's a little trick. It helps your cleanup, and it only costs a couple of pennies. I'd like to take a moment to honor the Wave Rover benefactors. So what is a benefactor? Well, these folks have made a contribution of $100 US or more to the project, and their names will be affixed to a bulkhead inside Wave Rover and will be traveling with me on our circumnavigation. Now, these donations truly are much appreciated. Well, Rovers, I really enjoyed this episode. Seeing the deck beams go in and define the shape of the deck, well, it was just really rewarding. Well, in the next video, it'll be all about decking over this area. As always, thanks for watching. Well, the Wave Rover patrons, with their pledges of support, really do make the creation of these videos possible. Now, if you'd like to know more about Wave Rover's patron page and benefactors bulkhead, I have links to both those pages in the video description. Now, another way to help Wave Rover, and it doesn't cost you a dime, is by sharing our content on your social media. So now, as always, Rovers, thanks for watching. Give us one more. Brilliant.